Again, thank you very much for your time. I know that it probably felt like a joke whenever you read my email about starting round 5 of Smart Scale. It truly never is too early to start thinking about that. So this again, and I do want to be very clear before we get started that this whole initiative that we're kind of kicking off is not exclusive to Smart Scale, and we'll talk about that as we move through here. But this definitely does tie into Smart Scale and also round 5, which I know round 4. You just got done submitting those, but we really need to start thinking about round 5 and all the other funding opportunities that we have available to us. I do want to point out that one of the goals of this whole process that we're kicking off and we're going to share with you guys this morning is to really help you develop application-ready projects. A lot of the things that VDOT is doing now is moving towards application-based programs, and we really want to help you guys develop application-ready projects. The other thing we really want to do is focus on solutions and have those really good applications available that would lead subsequently to good projects. And so, again, I don't want to dive too deep into this because we got some really good information to share with you guys as we move forward. I do want to introduce the speakers that we have today. I guess I was remiss in not introducing myself. This is Anthony Ford that you guys are listening to right now. I'm the district PM here in Salem. Also joining me today will be Michael Gray, our district planner, and also Jay Guy, who's our district program manager. So these folks have some really good information to share with you guys today as we move forward. So hopefully everyone is getting settled in. Hopefully you can see. If you're new to the Google Meets format, you can go down to the bottom right and change what you're viewing. You can put a little bit more spotlight on the presentation on the screen. Hopefully make it a little bit bigger for you guys to see. Do want to point out some meeting logistics real quick. If you have not already, go ahead and please mute your lines or your microphone, depending on how you dialed in. So far, I haven't heard anybody else, any other audio. So appreciate you guys doing that already, but just be mindful of that. We are going to provide the opportunity for you guys to submit any questions or comments throughout this brief presentation. Over on the right side of your screen, there's the chat feature in Google Meets. Please enter in any questions or comments you have throughout this this morning's presentation. Carol Moneymaker is also joining us. Will not be presenting, but is going to be providing a critical component of this meeting, and she's going to be monitoring the chat and the Q&A, the Q's that come in for the A's that come later. And so you guys submit those in the chat feature, and we'll again have some Q&A time at the end. And also, just as a reminder, like I said initially, we are recording this meeting. Just want everyone to be aware of that. So first and foremost, I know a lot of you folks that are dialing into this and have familiarity with the Salem District are very familiar with the names that I mentioned here. Myself, Michael, and Jay. But what you may not be familiar with is that back in March of this year, we at the district reorganized some of our structure to combine our planning and our program and investment management offices to put them under one umbrella. And really the whole point of that is there's this perfect marrying and merging of that mindset of identifying projects, identifying the proper funding for the projects, helping set these projects up to succeed from the get-go. And so there's a lot of there's more to that of kind of the benefits that come from that. But just wanted to make sure that everyone that we have been working with for years. Like I said, I know you folks are familiar with this, but we have had a reorganization that we think will be very beneficial for us and also very beneficial for you guys as well as we move forward. So again, this planning and program and investment management offices are now up under the same umbrella. So it really allows us to communicate better internally, and then also hopefully to communicate better with you guys as well. And again, I guess a takeaway from this slide, again, it goes back to what I hinted at a minute ago, is the whole point is to identify the right project with the right money at the right time. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish through the merging and also through this process that we're kicking off of the project pipeline mentality. And I will say kind of as a side note, hopefully you guys find this funny as it was in my head, is that, initially we started calling these the pipeline meetings. And I was like, well, sometimes the pipeline has a negative connotation in our current environment. So we're calling this, at least to differentiate a little bit, the project pipeline discussions. And again, it's all about identifying the right project with the right funding at the right time. So with all that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Gray to walk through some of the planning opportunities that are available to you guys as we kind of dive into this endeavor. So Michael, if I'm going to kind of mute myself here and turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, welcome everyone. As Anthony said, this is not just about Smart Scale, even though we're kind of wrapping up, from y'all's application process. We're going through our reviews right now, but this is what we're talking about today is not just about the Smart Scale process. Even though I think if we look back, 4 rounds ago to the first round, this is probably what started this discussion a little bit more is the Smart Scale process, but we've also integrated or pulled into that process, the Transportation Alternatives Program, the Revenue Sharing Program, State of Good Repair. I mean, we have all of our programs kind of going through a very similar process now, where we have an application process. It's either every year or every other year. But why are we doing this today? And I'd like to just kind of point out that first bullet on the slide is we're trying to identify projects, and we do a very good job of identifying projects at the kind of the long range planning level. And then, we have projects that end up in a program somewhere with money on them. What we're trying to do with this is take those big lists of projects that we have, and we have them at, the regional level with the TDCs and MPOs. We have them at the local levels through various tools you have there. And we're trying to refine some of those to move forward. We can't take every project you have and move forward and try to make it a successful project. We have to pick the ones that we feel like are the best ones that are that have an opportunity to get funding in the future. So we're trying to identify projects, we're trying to refine those, and to do that, it's going to take active stakeholder involvement. And stakeholders, really everyone that is on this call, plus some people. If we're really thinking about it from the local level, your planning staff, your engineering staff, your economic development staff, public works. At VDOT, it's our planning staff for L&D, environmental, traffic engineering. It's all of those folks involved in the refinement of these projects. And as I mentioned before, we have lots of ideas, and it's going to take collaboration to try to get those ideas whittled down into something that can move forward and be a successful project. One of the things that Anthony mentioned is, when we discuss this, whether we're talking about the Smart Scale process or the Transportation Alternatives Revenue Sharing, we have one MPO that has RSTP or STBG funding. We talk about what is the problem we're trying to solve, and then how is the best way we can solve it. Everybody looks at that through a different lens. Your local economic development person may look at that different than your traffic engineer and your planner, and so on. So we have to figure out ways that we can come to some consensus about what is the problem and how best to solve that. And I think if you've been involved in some of our processes so far in discussions about projects, I think you'll kind of understand that we're working through that, and we're refining that now, through the Smart Scale process we just went through, through some of our TA projects, through some of our revenue sharing projects we've had throughout the district. We've had a lot of discussions to kind of refine those and make them better projects. Let's not forget that we need public involvement for all of this. And in some cases, that might be that VDOT leads that public involvement effort on some type of study that we're doing. But I think in a lot of cases, especially moving forward, it's going to be public involvement at the local level or the regional agency level. So, we can talk about that, in more detail later, because we do want to have additional discussions with you. But that is going to be an important piece of this. We had some projects pop up this year where, there was local government interest in a project, but there hadn't been any public involvement. So there was some hesitancy to go forward with refining that project and submitting it. We had, multiple cases of that. So we just want to work through that process with y'all and figure out better ways to do that. The other we want to discuss today is kind of what are some of the data and tools that are available. VDOT is very data rich. We have a lot of data, and we've shared that with a lot of you folks. And if you don't have access to it, let us know. We have various ways to get it to you, but a lot of those are being put into more of a GIS tool these days. So we have that available, and we can work with you. And y'all at the local and regional level have a lot of data and tools as well. What are the benefits of this? And it's really those kind of last 3 bullets at the bottom. And it really is developing a manageable list of eligible, ready projects. We can develop lists of projects, but not necessarily eligible projects that have gone through, say, the VTrans process, and ready projects that are ready from an engineering perspective. So, we want to define scopes better. We want to develop better cost estimates, because at the end of the day, we don't want to put a project up that's a $2 million project and gets funded, and we realize down the road it's a $6 million project. We run into that. We have run into it, and we hope we're going to try to figure out ways not to do that in the future. And then the bottom one is really the optimal use of staff and financial resources. We've learned through VDOT that, these last several rounds of Smart Scale and TA and revenue sharing and all of those programs, that it's very staff intensive and it uses a lot of our resources. And we're trying to figure out ways that, we can not necessarily not do work, but we want to pare that down to where we're doing work that we feel like it has some benefit in terms of developing successful projects. If you look at our last round, or this round right now of Smart Scale, we've had around 60 projects submitted. That was a lot of work at the local level and the regional level, and a lot of work inside of VDOT as well with our consultants and our staff. Only a handful of those projects are going to get funded. I'd say anywhere from 10 to 20 will get funded. So we need to, looking out into the future, are there better ways that we can manage list of projects and kind of focus our attention on projects that are more apt to score well and compete. Go on to the next slide. Just as a reminder, kind of where we are now and where we were before. If you remember our old 6-year program, everybody used to laugh that it was a 6-year program because projects may only, may be there for 20 plus years. And if you remember, projects were selected and put on that program. Sometimes no one really had an idea how or why it got on that program, even some folks within VDOT. But it was selected, it was programmed with some funding on it. And then sometimes we would have to do planning studies to kind of determine what that project was. And then you would have a scoping process that then defined that project a little bit more. And if you will remember, that scoping and planning refinement of the idea that was selected previous sometimes ended up in a completely different project than what was originally thought about, or a project that was much larger, or every now and again a little smaller than what you originally planned on. So it really circled back to the programming level, and we had a lot of change from the scope to the program. We have to go back and either find money to add to it, or maybe we could take it away. But a lot of times those projects were just sitting there for years and years and years, kind of inching forward. What we have now, and what started 4, 5, 6 years ago, was that we really want to do our planning and try to refine projects and scope them, and then start selecting them and putting money to them. And as you have seen through many of our programs, what we're getting from the CTB is, they want to see projects that once they put money on them, there's not a whole lot of change going on with it. We always know that there's going to be some type of change, but they're trying to minimize the amount of times they have to go back and add money to a project, like we did in the before scenario, where there was change on just about every project that was out there. We've learned through the last few years that we still have some opportunity to improve that process and do better scoping, which is really leads back to do better planning. But that's part of what we want to engage you today about, and going on to the future is, how can we do a better job in this planning and scoping process so it leads to a better selection and programming process. Go ahead. Resources. I mentioned that VDOT is very data rich, and we have a lot of tools we can use. But we're not the only folks that have information. And if you look at the stakeholders, this slide right here has a lot, if not all of the stakeholders on it. From your localities to your PDCs, the VDOT to other, and when I put other, that's OIP, that's the public, our transit agencies. Even our on the federal side of things, the NEPA process and our federal partners as well. But what this slide does is it gives you an idea of kind of all the things that we have out there. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but it's a list includes a lot of the information that we do have. So, at the local level, we have your comp plan, your capital improvement program. Some of our localities do their own studies. Some of our localities actually have their own consultant assistants as well to take projects and refine them into something that they can submit. And just about everybody now has some type of GIS, and some of those are a little bit more robust, and some of them are not. But, I think in general, we all see GIS as a good tool for the planning and scoping process. PDCs are the same way. They have, the long-range plan. They do kind of regional plans, local and regional plans and studies. They have their annual work program, which VDOT kind of has something like that as well. But that's where the PDCs and the MPOs, determine what they're going to be doing the next year. So they engage their stakeholders, which are typically the localities, and then, determine what they're going to be working on the following year. They also sometimes have consulting services and also GIS. At VDOT, we have statewide plans and studies. We have local regional plans We've done multiple STARS type plans throughout our district. We have one going on now in 460 in Roanoke County, Roanoke City. We have the RTO preservation program where we've done a few corridors. We have multiple paths to use consultant assistance, whether we're talking about through planning, through traffic engineering, through L&D, through central office. And then the last one down there, and we probably want to touch on this when we have individual discussions with you, is our pathways for planning. And that's a tool that we're trying to utilize. It's a GIS-based tool that has, our crash information in it. It has our PSI, potential for safety improvement information in there that we use for some of our programs. And it's also going to be a tool that allows the localities and regional agencies to go in and put their ideas into that GIS tool, so we can all kind of use it and do better planning. And I also mentioned, OEP with VTrans. I think we're all continuing to learn a little bit with VTrans and how we need to make sure that our projects are meeting some type of need before it can really go into some of our programs. And then the public involvement I mentioned before, that happens at the VDOT level, happens at the regional level, happens at the local level. I think we can work a little better in the future to determine how best to get some public involvement and help some of these projects move forward. And then our public, transit agencies, most of our projects, we don't have a whole lot of kind of overlap between a VDOT type project and a transit agency project, but in some cases we do. So we want to make sure that our transit agencies are always at the table. I know the localities and the PDCs probably work closer with the transit agencies than VDOT does, but we also want to make sure they're just always available. And if we have issues that we're looking at and as we're refining those, if there's public transit options in there, we want to get those folks involved as soon as possible. And then again, we have big projects, from the NEPA side or federal side, that if we need to get those folks involved, we can as well. Go ahead to the next slide. This one really just shows a kind of a graphic of what we think the process could sort of look like. And it's really kind of showing there's a whole lot of ideas coming from the left side of the screen with all of our localities and regional groups and VDOT and VTrans or OEP team and VR DPT. So you have a lot of information. Each one of those dots kind of represents ideas. So we have ideas coming through this pipeline, and as we move forward through the identification of problems and refinement of solutions into eligible ready projects, that list is getting a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. And hopefully by the time we get to the funding programs kind of application process, whether we're talking about smart scale, TA, revenue sharing, or any of the others, we'll refine those down into a more manageable list and a list of projects that are more ready to move forward, that hopefully if they get funded, they'll have very little change to them moving forward. And then as you can see, there's a gap between that line and then the next line where we get into the 6-year program approval. And that's where we're doing our screening, we're doing our evaluation, validation of the projects, and we're doing our scoring of those projects. So, once you get to the 6-year program, if they make it through that and actually get funded, that line that you see moving to the right will just keep on going, because that'll be our project development process, where it gets into the hands of the project manager from the development side, which in our case with VDOT, it's L&D most of the time. And then it moves forward through there and goes to the project development process and design, goes to right away, and then goes on to construction. And that's kind of off the page there. But we just want to kind of show you this graphic. I think there's some bullets that were up there. Can they be put back up? Yeah, there we go. This kind of reiterates where we started with that first slide of we have a lot of ideas. We want to refine those. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of tools, and it's just going to take a lot of stakeholder involvement, and we're all the stakeholders. So we really want to kind of engage y'all moving forward. Some of y'all may already have a list of projects that y'all are very comfortable with, and we want to move those forward. We want to sit down with y'all and just help y'all kind of refine those and help y'all decide which ones y'all want to move forward with. So, and others, you may not have much, and we can help you identify or provide data that'll help you identify projects moving forward as well. So, at this point, I think that's all for my piece of this, and we're going to pass it on to Jay. And then at the end of this, as Anthony said, we'll be glad to take on questions that you may have.
Hey guys, it's Jay. The next couple of slides are funding related. So we're having the project pipeline meetings. We've met with you guys and developed that list of potential projects that we want to move forward. Now we get into, well, what are they eligible for? How do we fund these? So once we have collectively identified a list of desired projects, we begin looking for those sources to pay for those improvements. As many of you know, smart scale is not the only game in town, even though it's been the hottest topic lately. And what you see on the screen here is not even an exclusive list of all of the available VDOT funding, but these are the most frequently used sources for common transportation initiatives. And the project pipeline meetings we hope to establish with you will allow us to work with you to analyze these and any other fund sources that may come up to see what may be available for your projects. For some projects, this step may happen in conjunction with the scoping and estimating processes. There may be some components that could be phased or carved out to make those particular projects more competitive for funding sources, be it due to cost or scope, program eligibility, or for opportunistic timing of an application. There may be a current funding program that's open for applications that could fund a piece of your initiative, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of those and doing that collaboratively with you. For other projects, we'll just be using the planning, scoping, and estimate processes once they're developed to complete and to see what options are available to fund those overall projects. As you can see here, this is just a sample. It's broken up. Many of you have seen the funding menu before. What's on the left there is what you see when you log into Smart Portal. Those are the pearls or the options you have for those programs. And I just will say that the funding menu, any questions you might have on the Smart Portal access and the funding cycle that we'll talk about next are available. If you want a copy of those, they're sort of living documents, but we can make those available to you. We'll send out some information on that. So speaking specifically of opportunistic timing, Anthony, if you go to the next slide, this is the funding cycle. Many of you guys have seen this in previous presentations, but this version is going to be different than the ones you've seen. As I mentioned, it is a living document. It's gone through a lot of changes since we first rolled this out. So chances are, if you have one tucked away in a folder somewhere, if you saved a copy, it's going to be a little out of date. For those of you who have not seen this before, you may be thinking that the image with the colors and the boxes and the lines looks really busy and hard to follow. Well, as your colleagues and some of your staff can attest to, it is busy, but hopefully not too hard to follow. So, all right, how do we read this? That's a great question. The cycle is broken up by year with the even years on top and the odd years on the bottom. Even though 2020 may go down as the oddest year in history, it is an even year. So you can see you are here up in September of even years. So Anthony, if we'll click the next button, we did want to sort of show how the COVID-19 has impacted some of these schedules. The older versions did have specific dates lined up with the different boxes, but what we've kind of come to a consensus is that This is going to have to be a targeted timeline of when we think these normally will hit. So we kind of remove specific dates, but in general, let's look in the rearview mirror a little bit. At the very top of the screen, you'll see 2 green boxes. Those were what were supposed to be the CTB 6-year adoption in June and July. That has not happened yet. We're moving forward, hoping that will be done this fall. If you move to the right, you'll see an orange box for August where the Smart Scale final applications were due. And that actually did happen. But then if you move on to the red box, the very next item in line was the portal for HSIP projects that's going to happen, but we're actually not accepting HSIP applications for bike ped or systemic improvements this year. We are doing them for safe rail crossings. So as we meet, if you have any of those kind of projects, we'll be talking with you about those. But basically what this slide is up there, it is out there. As I noted previously, it's a living document. We'll be making changes and updating things as frequently as possible. But eventually we will return to regularly scheduled programming. That's a programming pun. If you weren't muted, you'd all be laughing right now. But without going into detail on the schedule, it moves into circular progression around the calendar each year. It's color-coded to help you follow the different steps. It's color-coded by program. So if you want to just follow Smart Scale, you'd follow all the orange boxes around the 2-year cycle. Same for revenue sharing and TA in red. So it's really, hopefully, fairly easy to follow. But obviously, anyone has any questions on those things along the way, let us know. What we hope is that these project pipeline meetings that we're scheduling with you throughout the year will help us to coordinate all of these processes, be it when you need to get approvals with your local elected officials, boards and councils, or whether it be when you should be planning, working with planning, working to get things in your CIP, for example, is a critical piece to make you a higher priority in revenue sharing, for example. So what we hope is these pipeline meetings will continue to develop your planning cycles, your funding cycles, and when you need to be working on the things that are critical to the applications for our funding programs. With that, Anthony, I'll turn it back over to you. We'll take questions at the end, but just kind of want to revisit a couple of these things that are critical pieces to the funding.
All right, thanks, Jane. Real quick before we leave this slide, just to kind of speak to the fluidity of it. I'm sure some of your eyes may have went to the September Smart Scale resolutions due. I think I saw an email this morning from Carol to one of our local partners that has actually been pushed back to October 30th, I believe. And so again, there is a whole lot of fluidity to the schedules. Everyone is finding out how flexible they are in their work life right now and personal life as well. But if anybody saw that and freaked out and thought, I need to get off this webinar and go start drafting up my resolution today, just know that particular one has been modified. And so that just speaks to the point of, it's really important to keep communication with us as things change so that we can keep everybody on the same track. So turn it over real quick, so we walked through the past, about 30 minutes or so of ideas, some kind of 30,000 foot level discussions about these new initiatives. And I say new, I know a lot of you folks have been doing some of this for years, but kind of new to us in the sense that we're kind of formalizing it and trying to put a plan into action. So that begs the question, what do you do next? What is the local agency's to-do list? And so we've helped just kind of identify some things that we think would be kind of some jumping off points here as we move forward from this webinar and move forward to the next coming months in this process. So the first thing we just encourage you guys to do is share this information, share this idea with any of your internal staff that maybe couldn't join us today, or maybe you need to pull in some of your project development staff, maybe you need to pull in planning commission work session type discussions, things like that. We just encourage you guys to take a look at just internally, what are some of the ideas that you've come up with over the years of some projects you've identified based on need. What are some you have an area that's getting a lot of citizen inquiries, just kind of start pulling together some of your ideas internally that would kind of feed into this project pipeline. Next, moving on to number 2, consider some PDC coordination. You folks that work closely with your PDCs, definitely tap into the resources and the expertise and knowledge that those folks have. So we encourage you guys to do that. Thirdly, we're going to be talking about here in a second on the next slide, how to schedule these VDOT meetings that Michael and Jay have both alluded to. We're going to try to, again, put some of this stuff, instead of just anecdotally talking about, boy, it'd be nice if we got together with these folks and talked about whatever. We're going to try to start putting, pen to paper and try to get together with you folks to put this stuff in action. So we'll talk about that here in a second. The next one, number 4, preparing the project ideas list. That goes back to that number 1. Before, we meet with you guys, we'd like you to, start putting together some of your preliminary lists. Like Michael stated very clearly a few moments ago, we know some of you folks there at the local level have been doing this for a while. We're not implying you're not. You've got a good comprehensive list, a prioritized list of projects that you like to move forward as the various application cycles come up. And that's great. And we want to make sure that we're on board with you as we move forward in this. But we also know that there's some localities that maybe are not as far along in identifying and prioritizing projects as others. So we want to help you do that. And so we would like, for those folks that maybe don't have that comprehensive list pulled together yet, that before you meet with us this first time, that you start at least putting together some ideas, at least putting together some thoughts of areas you'd like to focus on. Number 5 there, the identify resources, will probably come more to light during our discussions with you. As we nail down and define what are your project ideas, we'll be able to then go to the next step is what is the proper funding program for your particular project idea? What are resources available that we can offer up? What are resources that we've identified that maybe you already have at your disposal at the local level or the PDC level? And then number 6, really, and that's the whole really gist of this, is to refine that list of your project ideas, prioritize them, and get them ready for the applications, whatever those may be. Jay showed you that image a minute ago that had all the various funding programs, and really it's a year-round, multi-year round cycle of the various funding programs. A lot of our stuff are on off-year biennial cycles. And so again, this is not just a smart scale exercise. And you guys submitted your applications back in August, so it's time just to close the books on that and not thinking about it again until we put out the next call for smart scale applications. Again, this is the cyclical mindset of this never-ending planning and project identification process. So again, a lot of this is getting us to that number 6 point on that to-do list. So we've talked a lot about scheduling these meetings. Do want to point out that in the coming days, hopefully either tomorrow or Tuesday, of course, Monday being a holiday, that we're going to get out some information to you guys, some more information, one of which will be a link to a doodle poll. If you guys have ever participated in any of our locally administered projects, quarterly teleconferences, you've probably are familiar with the doodle poll option. And basically you just go to the link that we're going to send out. You find the date that works best for you guys, and then you just block off the 2-hour time slot that you'd like to meet with us. What we're going to try to do is offer up approximately 30 opportunities over the next month or so. Hopefully one of those 30 will work for you and your staff to find a 2-hour time slot where we can kind of get offline, roll up our sleeves a little bit more and dive into this a little deeper than beyond just this presentation. Again, during these meetings, we're hoping to have these one-on-one discussions about projects you've either already identified, what is the best funding program, when to apply, again, what resources available, or again, like I said a minute ago, to help you start coming up with your list of projects, and hopefully you come to the table with already some identified. Ultimately, these meetings will merge into or kind of turn into this regularly scheduled meeting format. So we're hoping at some point in the future, and again, it'll probably be, in calendar year 2021, we'll be able to start a regular meeting process with you guys. And so probably on a quarterly basis, we'll be meeting with every locality to really hone in on the planning and programming component of project development. We don't think we're quite ready yet to start that just regular scheduled discussion and communication line. So that's why we're offering up this initial meetings where we kind of dive deeper into this initial jumping off point. And so we just kind of want to pull back the curtain a little bit and let you know that ultimately, again, probably in calendar year 2021 for sure, we'll start the regularly scheduled quarterly meetings between planning, programming, and your staff. But this first set of meetings, first round of meetings, will be more specific. Again, more introducing what we're doing and kind of getting everybody off on the same page. So with all that, we know that we've probably generated some questions. Again, this is a new, somewhat new venture for us. Again, maybe not for you guys, but we know that there may be some questions come in. I'm full screen on the presentation, so I can't see the chat box right now. I'm going to turn that over to Carol here in a second, but real quick, just so that it'll be part of the presentation whenever we share it with you guys, you guys are already, again, already familiar with the folks you've heard from today, but here's our contact information. That will be part of the presentation. Also, Carol has joined us as well for monitoring the chat. The last bottom right one there, the residency contacts. I do not want to dismiss the importance of the communication with those folks. For you localities that already have good communication with your residency staff, we're not asking you to stop that. We're asking you to continue that and bring us into the conversations. So again, we do not want to dismiss the very important coordination that you already have with your residency folks, and we'll definitely keep that moving forward. So with that, like I said, I'm going to go off the full screen here, and I'm going to myself go to the chat screen just so I can see what all's going on there. But I'm going to turn it over to Carol to well, I am assuming before I go to that screen that we have some cues that come in so we can give you some answers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol.
Thanks, Anthony. And we've got a few questions in the box right now. First one, can we get the 2-year funding cycle to print and share?
Yeah, and I can speak to that for sure. We have that available on a website that we've put out there to share with our local partners, and we will make that available as part of the link that we send out with the doodle poll. We'll make sure that you guys have access to that.
Okay, next one is, can you address current revenue sharing application approval status?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I actually just right before this call was on a statewide call and asked that very question myself, because I am just as curious as you are. And I don't know that anyone has a direct answer for that right now. There is some budget language in the approved budget bill. I just saw either yesterday or the day before that makes reference very specific to the revenue sharing program. And it talks about the ability to take funding off of existing projects. And when I say take funding, I want to be very clear. We're not talking about deallocating as a whole. We're talking about if we have some existing revenue sharing projects that maybe have not moved forward yet, or maybe have, let's say, previous allocations or fiscal year 20 or 21, but are maybe not scheduled to go to advertisement until 2023. We'll have an opportunity to do some fund swaps between projects and identify ways we can maybe move some money around to keep the program going. That does not answer, Carol, the specific question about the recently submitted applications that would be for fiscal year 21 and 22. I'd be very, very hesitant to give anybody direct responses to those, because I think the budget revenue, the forecast, and all those things are still coming in. The information is still coming in, and central office was pretty clear with me right before this call that they don't really have a direct response to that as well. I will take a little bit step further that the TA program, the Transportation Alternatives applications, those are going to be taken to the CTB at the September meeting, and then at the October meeting, the expectation is that those will be formally adopted into the current 6-year improvement program. So any of you folks out there that applied for TA projects last fall and have been waiting to hear on those, I would strongly encourage you to dial into the CTB meeting in September, hear the presentation that's made there. And then the hope is that if all goes well, that those will be adopted into the 6-year improvement program in October, and we'll be able to get started with you guys with the agreements and federal PE authorizations and all that stuff soon. We know that that's a delay from what everybody's used to, and we appreciate everybody's patience, but obviously it's a very unusual year for that. So I don't know that I answered the revenue sharing question directly, other than say that right now we're just not real sure about the revenue sharing program, but we do have some certainty about the TA program.
Okay, the next question. Sometimes the funding priorities change within a program. For example, Smart Scale for our region has been shifting in priority to economic development as opposed to congestion mitigation, etc. in Northern Virginia. Funding priorities often guide what projects we might select. What is your best guess on the priorities for Smart Scale for round 5?
Yeah, and I'll probably look, Carol, to you and Michael to chime in on this. And that's a great question. And I get, it probably goes back to, there's no perfect crystal ball. There's no perfect answer to that. I'm always hesitant to tell people that let's take a look at how your project scored in round 1 or round 2 or whatever, and see how it might score in future rounds, because you're absolutely correct that sometimes the the priorities change, the metrics change, and it is hard to try to play a game when the goalposts are moving. 100% agree with you. And I guess I would leave that by saying, at least for my input, and again, curious to hear what Michael and Carol might have to say, is that I think that the best we can do is, as we have these ongoing communications with you guys, and that's one of the whole reason why we want to have this regularly scheduled meetings with you guys moving forward, is so that we can relay this information to you and have this open communication about it. I think that in the past, maybe, we've had all these, everybody's working in these silos, and then, we meet up, and then like, it'd been great if we could have shared information earlier on. And so that, again, I feel like I'm kind of over two now, directly answering the questions, other than say that I think one of the great benefits of starting this open line of communication is we can relay those things to you guys as it comes to light, and then help everyone better position their projects as that information comes up. So Michael and Carol, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I think part of what she's talking about there is we have the categories for our area types. And in our district, Salem District, we have, there's category A, B, C, and D. And in our area, we have category B, which is kind of the Roanoke MPO area. We have category C, which is up in the New River Valley MPO area. And then out the rest of the district is category D. So for each one of those categories, you have our factor weights. So congestion, economic development, accessibility, safety, environmental quality, and land use all get a percentage in the scoring of a project. I know we had a regional group request a change this year. Other than that, I don't think we had a locality or any other changes within our district. I do know that up in Northern Virginia, they changed some of the factor weights a little bit. I think that would probably not happen as a VDOT initiative, because I think the CTB is kind of wed to what they've done, as well as OIPI. And I think if anything is going to change, it's probably going to be at the request of the locality or regional group. So if you see that you feel like you're not in the right category, then you can always make that request to change. The other thing is just taking a look at the projects that have been successful through these programs, and just speaking from the area of Smart Scale, we've looked at all the projects through each round, round 1, 2, and 3, to look at where are they getting most of their points. And anybody can do that. That information is out there on the website. But you can look at those projects, and really the vast majority of our projects are getting most of their funding or their points from safety. And then I believe economic development is the next one. So, when you have very large congestion mitigation, accessibility, and accessibility is a component of congestion. So when you have really bad congestion projects in other parts of the state, especially Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, it's really hard for our congestion to get very many points when they have such a high score. Remember, the scoring is relative to the high score in the state. So most of our scoring on successful projects really comes from safety and economic development. And in our area types or categories, category B, that's 20% for safety and 20% for economic development. And category C is 25 and 25. Category D, that's 30% for safety and 35 for economic development. But everyone can take a look at that, and if they have questions specifically about that, we'll be glad to walk you through that and let you see kind of, or help you better understand the information that's available out there and how to look at, which projects are successful and where their score actually came from. But I think that's what you're getting at. I believe it's Brenda Mara. So if we're not answering that question, feel free to ask another one here or give us a call. We'll be glad to help you through that. In terms of looking forward, in terms of priorities for round 5, I would look at it the way it is right now. I think if any change is going to come, it's going to be some type of category change that is requested by a locality or regional group. Or there could be a locality and regional group, if there's enough support for it, may want to change some of the category weighting factors. That was done up in Northern Virginia this year, but we have not seen it, I don't believe, in any other part of the state.
And one other thing to possibly keep in mind coming out of round 4, looking forward to round 5, is there have been some changes in economic development scoring, specifically the inclusion of the VEDP sites. So just keep a close eye on that and see if that has a positive impact, because again, economic development is one of the factors in which we get our highest scores in this part of the state. So the next question is from Christina Finch. The Regional Commission is working on updating the rural and urban long-range plans this year. Would it be possible for you to notify us when the meetings with localities in the region are taking place so we can have a staff member participate?
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say, for sure. And that's, if you think back to that to-do list for the localities, and one of the things we asked folks to consider is, that coordination. And I think it'd be great if the various PDC staff could join us and join the localities for those meetings. I think it'd be great if residency staff from VDOT could also join those meetings. I think getting all the players at the table early on is a great idea. So the short answer to that question is yes.
Okay, we have one left. Will rec access funding applications be considered in September by the CTB?
Jay, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. As far as we know, we're still working and have been this spring and early summer to plan for applications whenever they open up the rec access considerations again at the CTB. But as of now, I'm not aware of any that are going before the CTB at their next meeting. So we may be looking at October or later meetings to actually take applications.
And I'll add in real quick to take that a little bit. The Economic Development Access, the EDA program, as we understand it, they are not currently taking applications for that right now. The EDA program is a rolling application cycle. You may throughout the year, the application process needs to be initiated, and you can do that. There's not like a certain time frame. We were working with Central Office a few months ago on one for one of our localities, and we were told that those were not being considered by the CTB at this time. That the overarching reason is they're just not adding any new projects to the 6-year improvement program at this time, specifically that are state funded, like that program is. I mentioned I don't want you guys to think, well, he's conflicting himself because he said the TA program was moving forward. I do want to be very clear that the TA program, which is obviously federal funded, which is a completely different program from a lot of the other stuff we have, is moving forward over the next couple months. But things like EDA and those other state funded programs are really on hold right now while the revenues are being reviewed and investigated. So we will definitely keep you folks informed. And as these meetings that you guys are going to schedule coming up soon, if anything changes, any potential projects come up in those conversations, we will make sure to share the latest and greatest with you at that time.
There are no other questions in the chat box at this time.
All righty. Well,
hey, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Before we end, can we go back to slide number 9? That's Jay's graphic showing the process.
Yep.
I just wanted to point out again, and Jay kind of mentioned that, if you look at this, it's complex. There's a lot going on each year in different programs. So, what we were talking about earlier in the presentation of, managing our staff resources and our financial resources, this is going to be an ongoing discussion that we would like to have with y'all. And once you develop your refined list of projects, I think it's also going to be a living list of projects. So it's going to have to change as we move along each year. And I just wanted to point at the complexity of all of this. And it really becomes an ongoing discussion that we're here to help you with. So, in terms of managing staff resources, managing financial resources, and just developing better projects, I just wanted to go back to this slide and just, reiterate it's complex and we're here to help you. But it does take commitment kind of throughout the year to keep something like this going, a discussion of what makes a good project and what are good projects.
Yeah. No, appreciate that, Michael, and thanks for a reminder for that, because it's again, this is not a one-off. We don't want to have one meeting with you and have one list of projects etched in stone, kind of like the Ten Commandments style, and say that's the only list moving forward. We truly want to work with you guys and it's going to be an iterative process every year. Your priorities you're going to need to be evaluated and changed, and really the whole, go back to what I said right off the bat is, the whole point of this is to help you guys develop application-ready projects. We've really geared more towards the application mindset for all of our various funding programs. And so again, this is just kind of step one of a marathon, so to speak. And so we're wanting to introduce this kind of new venture that we're kicking off on here again formally. We've had kind of various processes with you guys over the years, and again, I know you guys, a lot of you folks have been working kind of under this mindset on your own. So we're just wanting to come along beside of you, trying to formalize it here at our district, and again, try to help everybody develop the right project with the right money at the right time. So Michael, I appreciate those additional comments. So with that, I don't see the chat box. Carol, I will toss it back to you one more time to make sure no more questions have come in. I don't want to miss anybody that has submitted anything, so I'll check with you one more time.
Still no more questions.
All righty. Well, thank you for that. And thanks everyone for joining us. And again, be on the lookout for an email from us over the next couple of days. And make sure to sign up for your time slot to meet with us. And we're looking forward to continue this conversation with you in that setting. So hope everyone has a good day and stay safe. Thank you very much for joining us.